Hey everybody, my name is Mark and I own Northeast Photographic. Today I want to introduce and review a film that we sell right here in the store. It's gotten very little traction in terms of some of the product offerings that we have. So this is a little bit of a self-serving video. Just a full disclosure up front, we do sell this film, so let's get that out of the way. But I still think it's a very interesting product and I'm going to do a thorough and an honest review of it as well. The film is from our friends over in Germany. They are Adox Photo. I really like selling Adox products because I think that they offer a true alternative and a sustainable way forward for film photographers to keep shooting film. You know, they're making a lot of really great stocks from CMS20II, some reversal black and white stocks. They make awesome papers. But one of the lesser used stocks is the one I'm going to review today. It's called CMS20II Pro 2. You know, before I get too into the review, I wanted to address what it kind of means to have a film that is effectively grainless. The fact is, it's 2023 and then we've been using very good digital cameras for 15 years now. And the thing about digital and what makes it, in some of its image properties, different from film is that these images have no grain already. So if you're talking about an image from, let's take an older DSLR, like a D700, makes a nice 12 megapixel image. If you don't enlarge it past the resolution of that 12 megapixels at 240, 300 PPI, you get a beautiful grainless image that is going to be similar in characteristics to what in film we had to use for, or we had to turn to medium or large format to achieve. Well, let's assume that digital doesn't exist and that we're using film cameras. You know, back when I started in photography, it took me a long time to even know that medium format existed. Honestly, I thought that Ansel Adams was out there wandering around Yosemite with like a Nikon or something similar, and that all the historical photographs, even the ones that didn't have any grain, were all shot on 35. I just thought that that is what photography was. I thought they invented cinematography first. It's kind of the history. And then they were like, hey, we can use this for stills. And then that was it. And that other kinds of cameras didn't exist. I mean, I guess I had seen them in like Westerns, you know, the guy getting under a large format camera, but I didn't really register that as a different format. So in that frame of mind, which was somewhat ignorant, I would have thought that Ansel Adams was out there shooting Yosemite with a film like the one I'm going to describe now, which is Adox CMS20II. Now, that's not true. Larger formats do exist, so there are other ways to get effectively grainless images. If you make a 4x5 image and you enlarge it to 11x14 or 16x20, you're effectively not going to see any grain unless you look really, really close. Okay, well, big companies like Kodak, being what they are, they were always pushing the envelope back in the day. And that, you know, to some extent, they still try to do that now, although to a lower extent. They made a class of film that was meant for documents at that time. It was meant for copying documents. You know, you've ever seen a horror movie where somebody's like scrolling through all those newspapers in the library and they go, oh my God, here's a story about the murderers here. That was on a product called microfilm. It was like a really small roll of film and you'd use it to photograph a newsprint, and you'd have that for archival purposes because you could just store it in a film reel. Those films are characterized by basically two things. They are extremely fine grain, basically no grain. They are meant to be able to keep that text and data as legible as possible, and they're also kind of like halftone. Halftone meaning all blacks, all whites, not really anything in between. They're super high contrast. If you were to take one of those document films and process it in, let's say D76, you would get that effect. You would get like a very high contrast image. At one point, it may have been Kodak. I'm not really sure the history. This is kind of half-hearted internet research here. Kodak was like, well, this is a super high resolution film. Can we make this film yield a normal pictorial result? Expand those halftones into full tones and get a nice looking, beautiful monochrome image that you might expect from a normal camera, but with the properties of having no grain and all that resolution to play with. Well, eventually they could, and they released a product called Technical Pan or Tech Pan. That came with its own developer, because if you use a normal developer, you wouldn't get good results. So they came out with a developer called Technodoll. There was another developer also at the time called POTA, P-O-T-A, which stands for phenidone something something something. I'll look it up later. That achieved also similar results. Some people preferred one over the other, But these films became extremely popular because at the time they kind of marketed it like, hey, 4x5 quality in a 35mm frame. Like what I thought was happening with Ansel Adams before I knew about other formats. Well, TechPan was eventually discontinued. It was harder to get and use some of these things. To be honest, one might question the need for creating a purely grainless image these days when you can do so a lot easier with larger formats, and you can do so a lot easier with a digital camera. But we analog photographers exist. We want to continue playing with some of these tools. And over the course of this video, I'm hoping to point out some reasons why you might still want to use a very slow and very grainless film in 35mm, even if that particular imaging property, being grainless, might not be that special anymore. Hey guys, it's Bork here. I am going to shoot some Adox CMS20 Roman numeral 2. Today, I have come to a place called the North End Lobster Co-op. Okay, I am using my Leica. It's a Leica M4P. I have 3 Voigtlander lenses. I don't know if I'm gonna use them all, but I have them. I have the 50mm 1.5 Nocton. I have the new 35mm 1.5 Nocton. And I have the 21mm 1.8 Ultron. Anyway, one problem. I did not remember to bring my light meter. That sucks. I'm sorry. So I won't be capturing myself shooting a lot with my iPhone camera, but I did bring a drone. It's really windy, so I don't know how the battery's gonna hold up, but I'll try to capture some of that, but I don't wanna be here all day. And so I don't know if there's gonna be a lot of opportunity to capture like the B-roll of it all, but I don't know. Let's do this. Let's get out there and make some pictures, and then we will discuss when we get back to the darkroom. So it's quite windy out here. I hope that my microphones are picking this up. It's a good day to come out here and shoot with a rigid camera. All right, I'm gonna put my phone away and actually do this. But you guys can see the storm is really starting to come in now. Maybe this is the worst time to be shooting a 20 ISO film. I'm not sure, but we're gonna do it anyway, I guess. Okay, everybody, so I am back in my darkroom. I've got my shot roll here. I did end up only shooting the single roll of film because I got just a little bit busy and sidetracked over the weekend, and I'm gonna develop it right now. The way I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna follow the instructions as closely as I can. I'm not gonna go by any kind of internet lore. I'm just gonna do what the packaging says to do, which we'll go over in a second. And I'm gonna use my Jobo equipment to process it. And by equipment, I don't mean my Jobo rotary processors, I mean my tanks. I have this handy single roll tank. It holds one 1500 series reel, and it'll cover the film in a minimum amount of chemistry. If you look at the instructions, it'll say it'll cover the film in 250 milliliters of chemistry. Now, if you look at the PDF, and we'll get into some of this a little bit more, one roll of film requires 300 milliliters of chemistry. If you use less than that, then you will be underdeveloping your film. So we're gonna start at that baseline. Okay, so more on the notes for how to develop this film. Now, one area where I see some people run into some trouble is, and you know, this is understandable. If you are pretty experienced developing film, maybe you've developed a dozen roll, maybe a few dozen, maybe even a few hundred rolls of normal film, you might say, you know what, I know how to develop film. I don't need to look at the instructions. I have this down. You just need to kind of know the time and temperature, and then the rest of it follows. And typically that is true. most films you can develop using whatever agitation scheme you prefer, and they'll come out all right. Now, we've already discussed that you're using a specialty developer here. I really recommend that people, every time they try a fixer that they haven't tried before, even a photo flow that they haven't tried before, but definitely a developer that you may or may not have tried before, to look at the manufacturer's instructions. Most of the time, 90% of the time, there's a PDF data sheet that you can find online. Take a look at what it says to do. If you hadn't, with CMS20, you were going to run into some real trouble. Let's talk about how this differs. Most agitation schemes that we use today, in a normal sense, you pour in the film, you agitate for the first 30 seconds, and then after that, typically you do, 2 to 5 inversions every minute for the course of the developing action. Some people will do more advanced techniques, it might be semi-stand, whatever. Now, Adox CMS20 basically calls for a not a semi-stand and not a kind of stand inversion agitation scheme, but it is a gentle one. So it calls for exactly one inversion every 1 minute. And I've even heard some people describe that they don't even fully invert the tank, that they just kind of lightly rock it from side, like a couple ways, and then put it back down. The entire thing that you're trying to do with this developer is tame the contrast. So you don't want to over agitate, and you don't want to do anything that would increase granularity or contrast here. And agitation will certainly do that. You don't want to increase that development activity. Now, if you look at the bottle, we talked a little bit in the car about the different ISOs that you can shoot this film at. On a sunny day, you shoot it at 12, and on a cloudy day, you shoot it at 20. And it does have a speed here for 25. It was a very cloudy day. I shot the film at 20 ISO. So for that, it calls for 1 to 14 at 24 degrees Celsius for 11 minutes. And if you were to do it at the 12 ISO setting, so a normal sunny day, you would do 23 degrees for 10 minutes. So that's being pretty specific. To be honest with you, unless you're using a tempering bath, I don't know if you're going to be able to perfectly maintain a single degree over the course of a 10-minute development scheme. That's actually hard to do. Now, if you have one of those sous vide kits where you can keep your tank in a water bath and you're doing this all by hand, maybe that's something that you want to do. For the purposes of this test, I want to stick to what I would think of as just like a normal practical reality with the within the confines of that I'm using a kind of special development device. But I'm going to just have my temperature be right on at the start, and I'm going to let it just kind of go after that. I'm not going to try to carefully maintain it throughout the process because there's really not much I can do. I don't have a tempering bath unless I were to set up my Jobo and whatever. I'm not going to do that. So we're going to stick to that. Now, if you continue reading the PDF, I wish that they would honestly have this kind of stuff in like bold type. You use a water stop bath, and then when you get to your fixer, normally you'd go, well, I know what my fixer is. We're just fixing film. I've done that a million times. But you're not here. It only wants you to fix your film for a maximum of 1 minute, one single minute in the fixer. That's an extremely short fixation time. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have it agitate in the normal scheme. Now for formulary TF5, which is the fixer that I usually include in my 510 Pyro dev kits, and the fixer that we use in the lab and that I recommend to everyone, that has an agitation scheme of 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to have it agitate for the first 30 seconds and then have it pause for the remainder of the 30 seconds, but then I'm going to pour it out, and then we're going to do a normal wash. In this case, it is a very short fixing time, so I'm going to say a 5-minute wash is probably fine. And then if you go further into the instructions, it gets a little weird with the photo flow. It basically says that it should be a very dilute rinse solution, and then you should wipe it with a paper towel and then dry it. That's an area where I'm gonna maybe see what happens if I just use my normal, which is already kind of a not very highly diluted rinse bath, and then use just my dryer. If I get watermarks, then I will wash the film again. But hopefully we won't run into that. But anyway, let's get into it. Let's see what happens with this film. Okay, we're gonna use the Heeland TAS film processor. The Heeland TAS film processor it's not really a processor as much as it is just a machine that automates inversion processing. We use it in the lab when we want to get the best possible monochrome results out. It doesn't pump any chemistry. You're still kind of aligning the tank by hand and letting it do its thing. and you're dumping and filling all by hand, but it basically it takes over all the agitation and tracks time and even compensates for temperature. So I really like it for very advanced black and white purposes. But to program it, we have to input all the data that it wants. So let's go through that now. Again, if we look at it, we did 1 to 14, and it says 24C, 11 minutes. Okay, so item 1 is total time. So we're gonna just go up to 11 minutes, not 11.1. Okay, you can get pretty precise with this guy. Okay, and then you hit select, and then the start cycle. So this is how long it agitates for the first, or to start with. We want to do 30 seconds. Okay, so this is how many times, or how long it takes for the next cycle. Now, I was wrong when I did my initial thing. It actually is every agitation once every 2 minutes. So we're going to change this to a 2-minute break between agitations, and then how many times it agitates. So we're going to have it just do once, and then it does the speed value for how quickly it's doing it. Now, again, we want to minimize all this, so I'm just going to set it to 1. So that should be a pretty slow rotation. The next setting is the temperature that you want to have it develop at. So 24. Now I have here in the tank, which you can kind of see in the corner, a thermometer in there to tell me the real temp. So I'm getting 71.5. So let's just say 71. I'm going to have to do a quick conversion on that to figure out what the Celsius is. Okay, so I'm back. So it's about 70 or 22 degrees in actual time. So you hit select, and then a little point period comes up on the 6 because you haven't really left it. So we're going to change this to 20. It's actually like 21.7. So I guess you can get like really exact. I don't know. I mean, so in some ways, like, it's going to change throughout the process, but whatever. That's what we'll do it at. Now it should be temperature compensating from that. Now the rest of them are like a fixed time. We're going to fix by hand, so we'll just leave that at 0. And then I don't even know, maybe something to do with a wash. We're not going to mess with that too much. So the value comes up here, and then this is the core time at the correct 24 temp. But when you start the process, it'll lengthen because it knows that you input that you're doing this at a slightly different temperature. I'm going to pour in my chemistry. It says not to do a pre-wash with this combination because it leads to higher contrast, and everything we're trying to do is to minimize that contrast. So you lock this on, you do it pretty tightly, you make sure it's on the little wheel on the bottom there. Okay, I'm good to go, and I hit start. So immediately what you're going to notice is that the Helin TAS automatically handles the rotation and the spin of the tank. It does so with a little rubber wheel back there. Now sometimes that's a little hard to align. That's like one of my complaints about this. The temperature that I had dropped to about 20.5, so that's what I input into the temperature correction, and then you can see it changed it to about a total time of 15 minutes, so it's counting down there. If I input everything right, then every 2 minutes it should do its 1 agitation cycle, so we'll wait for that. Hey everybody, thanks for watching so far. I did not intend for this to be a 2-part video, but it's getting so freaking long that it's going to have to be. In the next video, I'm going to go over the scans, and then hopefully after that, we can do a video where I make real prints. So if you want to find this film, CMS20II, you can find it as a kit in our online store. You can navigate to it in the link that I'll have below, and we have it set up for you to be able to buy one bottle of the developer and then all the film that bottle will develop. So one bottle and 5 rolls. It's not actually that expensive compared to the film prices that are out there today. So I think that if you're interested in taking some pretty incredibly sharp pictures, as you're going to see in the next video, it's really worth your time trying it out. Anyway, if you're not a Northeast Photographic customer, we are a full-service film lab. Check out our services. You can go to our website and look at all of that. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry about the length of this video. I will hopefully get better at keeping these somewhat short. Have a great day, everybody.